The lesson to be learned from 4th of July. 4th of July is not only for celebrating of our Independence Day, but also it is about learning how to make a firm decision that is necessary for all human beings in the world to learn how to decide for their lives. My fellow Americans, happy 4th of July, the Independence Day. The importance of 4th of July is not only getting independence from the British Crown, but also it was about making decision by 56 brave men who decided to be either free and independent or die. And indeed, they caused freedom and independence to the United States. Please allow me to read you an excerpt from the book Think and Grow Rich by Napoleon Hill about this great decision. The great decision of all time, as far as any American citizen is concerned, was reached in Philadelphia, July 4th, 1776, when 56 men signed their names to a document which they well knew would bring freedom to all Americans or leave every one of the 56 hanging from a gallows. We all remember the date of this momentous decision, but few of us realize what courage that decision required. We remember our history as it was taught. We remember dates and the names of the men who fought. We remember Valley Forge and Yorktown. We remember George Washington and Lord Cornwallis. But we know little of the real forces back of these names, dates, and places. We know still less of the intangible power which ensured us freedom long before Washington's army reached Yorktown. Let us briefly review the events which gave birth to this power. The story began with an incident in Boston. March 5th, 1770. British soldiers were patrolling the streets, by their presence openly threatening the citizens. The colonists resented armed men marching in their midst. They began to express their resentment openly, hurling stones as well as epithets at the marching soldiers, until the commanding officers gave order, "Fix bayonets, charge!" And the battle was on. It resulted in the death and injury of many. The incident aroused such resentment that the Provincial Assembly, made up of prominent colonists, called a meeting for the purpose of taking definite action. Two of the members of the assembly were John Hancock and Samuel Adams. Long live their names. They spoke up courageously and declared that a move must be made to eject all British soldiers from Boston. Remember this, a decision in the mind of two men might properly be called the beginning of the freedom which we of the United States now enjoy. Remember too that the decision of these two men called for faith and courage because it was dangerous. Before the assembly adjourned, Samuel Adams was appointed to call on the governor of the province, Hutchinson, and demand the withdrawal of the British troops. The request was granted. The troops were removed from Boston, but the incident was not closed. That led to the First Continental Congress to be held in Philadelphia, September 5th, 1774. Remember this date. It is more important than July 4th, 1776. If there had been no decision to hold a Continental Congress, there could have been no signing of the Declaration of Independence. Before the first meeting of new Congress, another leader in different section of the country was deep in the throes of publishing a summary view the rights of British America. He was Thomas Jefferson of the province of Virginia, whose relationship to Lord Dunmore, representative of the Crown in Virginia, was as strained as that of Hancock and Adams with their governor. Shortly after his famous summary of rights was published, Jefferson was informed that he was subject to prosecution for high treason against His Majesty's government. Inspired by the threat, one of Jefferson's colleagues, Patrick Henry, boldly spoke his mind, concluding his remarks with a sentence which shall remain forever a classic. If this be treason, then make the most of it. It was such men as these who, without power, without authority, without military strength, without money, sat in solemn consideration of the destiny of the colonies, beginning at the opening of the First Continental Congress and continuing at intervals for 2 years until on June 7, 1776, Richard Henry Lee arose, addressed the chair, and to the startled assembly made this motion. Gentlemen, I make the motion that these united colonies are and of right to be free and independent states, that they be absolved from all allegiance of the British Crown, and that all political connection between them and the state of Great Britain is and ought to be totally dissolved. Lee's astounding motion was discussed fervently and at such length that he began to lose patience. Finally, after days of argument, he again took the floor and declared in a clear, firm voice, "Mr. President, we have discussed this issue for days. It is the only course for us to follow. Why then, sir, do we longer delay? Why still deliberate? Let this happy day give birth to an American republic. Let her arise, not to devastate and to conquer, but to re-establish the reign of peace and of law. The eyes of Europe are fixed upon us. She demands of us a living example of freedom that may exhibit a contrast in the felicity of the citizen to the ever-increasing tyranny." Before his motion was finally voted upon, Lee was called back to Virginia because of serious family illness, but before leaving, he placed his cause in the hands of his friend, Thomas Jefferson, who promised to fight until favorable action was taken. Shortly thereafter, the President of the Congress, Hancock, appointed Jefferson as chairman of a committee to draw up a Declaration of Independence. Long and hard the committee labored on a document which would mean, when accepted by the Congress, that every man who signed it would be signing his own death warrant should the colonies lose in the fight with Great Britain, which was sure to follow. The document was drawn, and on June 28th, the original draft was read before the Congress. For several days, it was discussed, altered, and made ready. On July 4th, 1776, Thomas Jefferson stood before the assembly and fearlessly read the most momentous decision ever placed upon paper. That's how the free and independent United States was born. Happy Independence Day that happened on 4th of July. As a proud US citizen, I personally respect all men and women who decided and acted upon the great decision, and all others who gave their lives to establish the great independent and free United States of America. Those great men and women showed all other nations and every individual in the world that they must decide for themselves and not to wait on others to decide for them. I hope the great spirit of those men and women that brought freedom and respect to the United States of America on July 4th, 1776 will be kept and continued by our people, media, and politicians. I dream the day that our politicians, instead of fighting each other for power, fight for greatness of the United States and cooperate together to maintain the greatness and dignity of our nation. Let me remind you, despite all political games driven by politicians and media, we are still one nation under God, indivisible, with liberty and justice for all. Long live United States of America and our great nation. Happy Independence Day, and I wish you a safe and joyful 4th of July. Thank you for watching this video. This is Dr. Dilan, and I consider myself not only the citizen of the United States of America, but also the citizen of the world. I believe in unity of the whole world and deeply believe all people are born equal. If you would like to have the entire chapter on decision from Napoleon Hill, you may read it from his book, Think and Grow Rich. I recommend everyone to obtain a copy of this great book and read at least the chapter on decision. If you cannot do this, you may download PDF copy of the transcript of my video from my website, thetoweroflife.com/events.html. Thank you again. I wish you a great day.